Alright, this is a demo on how to use Adobe Photoshop for photo editing. Just to quickly show you, if you have access to Adobe Photoshop on the school computers, great. If not, you can download a version here. Now, you do have to pay for using Photoshop, although there is if you click on this, you can see there's a 7-day free trial. If you want to, you can also, of course, go to the section right here if you want to purchase a monthly usage of Adobe Photoshop. You can do that through buying the entire package of Creative Cloud apps. That gives you lots of different pieces of software to use from Adobe. There's a 60% discount, as you can see, for students and for teachers. All you need to use is your student email address, and then you should be able to get that quite easily. It is about 150 Hong Kong dollars per month. But again, you don't have to do that. If you just want to try the free 7-day free trial version, you can do that when you edit your photos. Okay, so let me open this up for you. I'll show you the 5 photos that I'm going to use today do some demo or practice editing. It's these 5 right here. And let's start up Photoshop. I've just got it down here. All right, so it starts up rather quickly, as you can see. What I would recommend is when you start up Photoshop, oftentimes it'll start up kind of small, like not as a full size. It may start up on your page like this, or on your computer like that. So just go in the top left corner and that little green button, just click that and it'll pop it open to full screen for you, which really is much more ideal to work with when you're editing pretty much anything that's visual, photos or videos or even audio. So I've got it full screen now. I'm going to show you how all the panels work in just a moment, but before we do that, I'm going to actually open up my 5 photos. So let's go to File, Open, down to the desktop, Sample Photos. Let's just highlight all of those and we'll open them all up. Because once we open them up, now we will have Photoshop with all of its panels opened, and then I can kind of go through some of them one by one to give you an idea of what you're looking at and some of the tools that you're going to use. All right, so obviously right in this front and center, the biggest panel that we have to us, that is where we'll see the individual photos that you're working on. It's really nice to have this as big as possible so that you can really zoom in tightly to these photos and do all your editing work there. And you can see around the left and right and on the top is where a lot of the other tools are being pushed or being set so that we can use them. So first of all, on the left panel, these are all the various tools that are available to be used in Photoshop. Of course, there's tons of tools that we can work with, and even more tool options that I'll talk about in a moment. For photojournalism and documentary photography, there's really very little need or use for all of these tools. You can, of course, do some really intense editing with them post-production, but for our purposes as a more introductory demo on how to use Photoshop, we're only going to use a few of these tools over here in this toolbar. And as you click on these individual tools, you'll notice that up here, that top panel, that top bar, kind of changes. So those are a different variety of tool options that we can work with. So with each one of these tools that we select, you'll see that our options change. Also within this panel here on the left, you'll notice that some of these these little icons have a little white arrow on the bottom side. So if you basically were to click and hold it, you're going to get more choices of tools to work with. So if you click your mouse button and hold it down, you'll see there are more choices. All right. Right here, just above our main panel, you have a strip of all the photos that have been opened that we are working on. So you can kind of toggle through all of these if you want to, the 5 photos. If we go over to the far right now, we have a variety of other panels that can contain more information, such as editing options, colors, properties, adjustments, history, and so on and so on. And there's some of them down here as well. And of course, on the very, very bottom right, we have 3 more panels, the layers, channels, and paths. And this is for really much more advanced editing. But you can use them if you want, but I won't be going over these items here today. Just to let you know, Adobe Photoshop does give you the option that you can move a lot of these panels around. For example, I can pull my history panel out, I can put my history panel up here, I can put it up here. So you can really do all kinds of, I guess, custom layout or designs for you, however you feel most comfortable working. Under the Windows section, there are plenty more panels or different types of tools that you can work with here. I won't open them all for us. I'm just basically got the most important ones, which are the tools, the options. Maybe we'll use history. We really probably won't look much more at these other ones that are available. All right, so when it comes to editing, the best way to do that, your best workflow is pretty much just working on one image at a time. So when you open in Photoshop, hopefully by now you've already made your selection of the photos that you're going to be using in your final story. In this case, it's probably the 5-shot photo story. And then you only really need 5 photos, and if you work on them one at a time, you can really spend a pretty good, a lot of effort on just improving each picture individually. All right. So as I go through this workflow, this step-by-step instructions, I think it's probably best to just kind of do some of the basic things right at the beginning before we start getting too much into manipulation of the image, the colors and the tones, color correction, white balance correction, those types of things. Probably the best thing to do is either do a crop or fix a horizon line. So let's do a horizon line fix first. Let me pick up this image right here. So the horizon line is this right here. That's basically where the sky meets Earth or our planet. And that can be where the sky meets mountains, or the sky meets seas or oceans, or where the sky actually meets some other kind of land. And as you can see here, this horizon line is rather crooked. So we'd like to maybe try to find a way to get that straightened out. Okay, so we're going to use a straighten tool, or the option, straighten option in the crop tool. So the crop tool on our toolbar is this one right here. We can just pick the crop tool. And up here in our other options that we've got something called straightened. So let me just click on straighten. And then I'm going to draw a line roughly across here, because I'm saying that is my horizon line, and that's what I need straightened out. I need this line to actually be really straight horizontal from left to right. I let go, and it basically straightens out the picture for me. And it also creates a very easy kind of crop window for us, because you'll notice that once I straighten that horizon line, the entire picture is tilted. So we can't really crop anymore on these parts right here. That's out of the picture now because this is our window crop. Okay, so we've straightened the horizon line. Now we can crop our photo. Before we just jump right into cropping the photo, let's do some other things up here. So ideally, I think if you want to keep your same ratio the way you have it, and what that ratio means is, for example, in this photo, which was shot by a DSLR camera, that is a 2:3 ratio. So it means for every 2 this way, it's 3 that way. Different cameras shoot at different types of ratios. For example, if you shoot with a Hasselblad 6:6 camera, that's a 1:1 ratio. That's a square picture. Instagram shoots in square. Most DSLR cameras will shoot in a 2:3 ratio. And most mobile phones and more simple digital cameras, point and shoots, will shoot in a 3:4 ratio, which is also almost completely square, but still a bit of a rectangle. So if you pull this drop-down menu right here, as you can see, there's lots of choices. So I could decide I want to crop this as a square photo, or I can crop it as an 8:10 or a 16:9. That's what many films are shot in, or a 2:3. But rather than go through all those, I'm just going to choose my original ratio. So that's the ratio of what that photo was shot at to start off with. Okay, so we've got a few things that we can work with here. We do have, if we select down here, we can have different types of grids that we can choose to work with. Some of these are more used more for art type of layouts and designs. But let's just stick with the rule of thirds. That's something we're probably most comfortable with seeing, if, in case you want to put a subject here to the left side or the right side, or if you want to put your horizon line not always in the middle, you want to put it on this line or on that line. So we can crop it. You can move the crop around. So let's say I want the horizon line like that, or if I want the horizon line more like that. Of course, I can pull it out again. I can move it around. If I wanted to make it even more vertical than horizontal, I can actually pull it over this way, so I can change this picture from a more horizontal picture to a more vertical. But I'll just keep it as a horizontal. I really think it works best that way. Okay, let me open this up a little bit more. So let's say you've got your picture something like that. You can either just double click in here or just hit the return key, and it crops it for you. Okay, again, let me just show you again one of these other ones. We'll do a crop, for example. Let's say you don't want these figures in this museum photo from down here, or the people on there. So you just want to just focus on this artwork, this sculpture of wood on the back of this old warship, this old Swedish warship. So again, we'll hit the crop tool. We'll keep it at original ratio, and now we can just pull these little edges in here. We can reposition it to make sure that we get as much of this sculpture in. Let's open it up just a little bit more. Okay, remove all those figures, those people. Double click, okay, and you've got a crop there. A few other things to correct right from the beginning. For example, let's say you've got this photo right here, and you need to change it from, it was shot originally as a vertical, but somehow when I got it out of the camera and then into the software, it changed into a horizontal or a landscape, which I don't want. I want it to go back to vertical. So I need to flip this back up again, so to say. So maybe do a 90-degree clockwise rotation. Let's go to image, image rotation, 90 degrees clockwise. There you go. Now, since I've done this rotation, you can see the picture is actually not completely in our viewing area. So it's a little bit too big in some ways. So to see it full, completely 100%, I can use a couple of keys on my keyboard. I can use the command minus key, or I can use the command plus key to make it larger or smaller. Now what that's doing is it's just basically increasing or decreasing our viewing size. It's not decreasing or increasing the pixel size of the picture, because if you look down here in the lower left, you can see this percentage. So basically it means currently this picture is being displayed at 33 1/3%. So of course if I were to command plus, it gives it the 50%, 2/3 size, and that's at 100%. Let's get it down to about something like this, so we can see it the full size in our viewing area here. Okay, so that is some quick steps on how to do a crop. That's something we should do right from the beginning before you do any other kind of work on your picture. Next, you may decide that you want your photos to be in black and white, so you want to convert them from color photos to black and white photos, and that's completely acceptable in photojournalism and documentary photography. But I would recommend that if you do that, if let's say you're doing a series of photos for a story, 5, 12 to 20, something like that, that you decide to make all of the photos black and white and not just a few of them. So your story should be all black and white or all color. And your photos, individual photos, should definitely not have selective coloring or selective black and white. For example, if we were to have this photo, we'd want to make this all black and white, but we want to keep the orange juice as color. That's a no-no. You want to keep it all black and white or all color. So to do this into black and white, it's a very, very easy step to do. So you go up to Image, Adjustments, Black and White. And what will happen, it'll give you this kind of drop-down pop-up box. Now you can just say, okay, it automatically decides what's black and white for you. And if we hit the preview button, we can see, again, color, black and white, color, and black and white. So you can actually do some changes here. But if we look back at the original color version of this, there's not too many differences of colors. It's pretty much just all brown with a little bit of kind of a green here, maybe a little bit of green down there. So there's not much that you can change on this one. But if you have another photo, let's pick, let's say, let's find, well, maybe this one right here. Let's say you want to change this one to black and white. Image, adjustments, black and white. Changes it to black and white. Now let's look at it in color again. As you can see, there's a lot of blue in this picture. We're going to come back to that in just a moment. And there's some orange right here. So you can actually look at these various color grades right here, these bars. And remember, this is orange and the rest is blue. So if we just manipulate the blue choice right here, you'll notice that we can take the blues and make the blues darker or lighter, right? It only affects the blues in the picture. Or for example, if we look at the oranges, which is a combination of red and yellow, we can make our orange juice darker as well, as you see. Or we can make the orange juice lighter if you wanted to do that. Okay, so that's how you can actually manipulate a little bit. Certain colors, make them darker or lighter. Now, please keep in mind that, let's say something in your picture was, let me find another photo here that we can maybe play with. So let's say we've got this light blue pen, and we're going to, again, image adjustments, black and white. So we take blue. Now that was a light blue pen. We wouldn't necessarily want to make that a black pen. That's, I mean, I know it's a minor thing, but it's still, you're manipulating and you're changing something. You definitely don't want to change that into a white pen then either. I think someone back here had a red jacket on, so you don't want to change all the red stuff to something that it's not. Okay? So let's just go back to this one, image, adjustments, black and white. Yeah, you can do some changes here, but the thing is, again, we're not going to have that much change because this was all brown. Okay, you hit OK. Now, let's say after doing certain steps in your editing process, you actually we want to go back to something you've done before. You can go to your history over here, and you can step back the different changes that you made. Now, unfortunately, since we are working in Photoshop, we're not going to work with layers or anything else. We're basically just working with one layer. Every time you do a function or some kind of edit, it's just going to add to this list of history. Now, you can go forwards and backwards in this history, but if you do go back in history, that means everything you've done before that time is going to disappear. So if I were to do that and then do another step, these two steps would disappear. So it's basically called destructive editing. So you can't really return to one thing. Or let's say you've got 20 steps and you just want to remove one of the steps. Well, you have to go all the way back to just that step before and then continue again. All right. Now how about, let's think about some color corrections. Let's look at this picture right here. So this photo was shot inside of the ice hotel. In northern Sweden. And of course, it's all ice everywhere. It's indoor. The light that was in this place was rather blue, and of course, it reflects this amazingly strong blue light everywhere. In fact, the picture overall is way too blue. Even the orange juice is a little bit too blue. The ice is blue. This person right here is almost all blue. So there's too much blue. And what had happened is when the camera was looking out and using automatic white balance, it thought that this scene needed a stronger blue filter on top. Well, when we look at it later on, we realize that absolutely it's become too blue everywhere. So we need to do some kind of correction on this. There are a few things that we can use up here to work on trying to correct this, various adjustments, which I'll show you in a moment. But we've also got kind of a more automated one, which acts as like a filtration, or it's a way to correct the white balance. It is automated, as I said. It does it automatically for you, but let's go ahead and do it anyway, just to see what kind of effect or what kind of result we're going to get out of this. So for color correction, the white balance correction, let's go to Image, Auto Color, click that, and you can see that it really now changed the ice to the real white that it should be. We've got a real orange juice, and we've even got some of the blue that's been taken off of this person right here. So again, if we look back and forward, we can see this is a much better representation of the color that we really, really want for this picture. And even this photo right here, this is a bit too green. It's a bit too flat in the top. You could also do an auto in here. Now understand, in this case, I think the software was quite smart, and it was able to do it for us quite well. It was able to convert something that was too blue into, I think, that was something that more accurately reflects the scene. And this one, I suspect that it's probably not going to perform as well because it doesn't have a large variety of colors. It's got some kind of greens down here and some blues, but nothing else kind of in between. But let's try it anyway. Image, auto color. So this is what it came up with, and for sure, if we go back, we can see that there is way too much green down here. Even the snow and ice is green. Sky's a little bit too pale. A little bit of green in there as well. But now I think it went too far. It's now made this, I think, a bit too blue, especially this mountain range in the background is too blue. And it's really, really oversaturated these lines of the grass and the dirt and ice, grass, ice, dirt. So we might have to, we could keep it like this to start off with as an auto color. But I think then maybe we'd probably want to do some additional changes to bring it back to how it more accurately looked at that time. And some of those additional changes that we can work on include image adjustment levels. Right? This little pop-up box, let me explain some of the things in here. This is called a histogram. These waves, these peaks and valleys. And this is basically a representation of the tones, the light and dark tones that are in this image. So if we look on the far left right here, this is the absolute blacks. Now, looking in my picture, maybe there's a few places, there might be right here some absolute blacks, but there's not that much. That's why we don't see so much on this end. This end is the absolute whites. Now, this may seem white, but it's not absolute white. This is more of a dirty, snowy white. So there's no absolute whites, except for maybe in these clouds up here. There's some absolute whites. So we've got a little bump right there. And everything in between represents all the other tonal ranges in the black and white spectrum. So let's say I thought my picture was too dark or too light. If I think it's too light, I can actually take my darks and click on this little icon right here and pull it in and make the image darker. Or I can click on this one over here and make the image lighter. Or I can grab the middle one. This is basically altering the midtones. So it'll leave my blacks alone, leave my whites alone, but it'll change the middle tones. Okay, so you can just change the middle tones if you wanted to. Of course, it'll allow you to preview it if you want to as well. If you're happy, you hit OK. Now, again, when it comes to photojournalism and documentary photography, there's really not so much we're going to do. There's very little we'd like to do. We just want to bring the picture back to roughly how it might have looked, or as closely as accurate as possible how it looked when we took the photo. But I will share with you a few other adjustments that you can work with. And let's try to work with some different photos here. So let's say image adjustments, brightness and contrast. Right, so it's exactly what you think it does. Makes the picture brighter, makes it darker. Contrast is basically making the brights more brighter and the darks darker. So we can pump down the contrast, it makes it more flatter. We can bump up the contrast, right? It makes the darks darker and the lights lighter, so to say. Got different types of effects that you can get, especially in black and whites. These kinds of variations in contrast can be very dramatic sometimes. Okay. This picture right here, I think there's something interesting that we can do. So our subject over here, the person who is in this ice hotel, is quite dark. So we're losing a little bit of information. Yeah, she is out of focus, but maybe we can lighten her up a little bit. Whereas here, this ice piece is quite bright. So we want to work with something that's going to bring the lights out of the darkness and put a little bit of darkness into the lights. So again, let's go to Image, Adjustments, Shadows and Highlights. And what this now allows us to do is let's look at the shadows first. We can make the shadows brighter, so it only looks at the dark spots of the photo, and we can bring a little bit of information out of there. So we can do that, and we can take the highlights and we can turn the highlights down just a little bit. Okay, so some of this ice and some of the other things we can make a little bit darker. Right, I guess we should be a little bit careful that we don't overdo it, because then it probably won't be accurate. Okay. Something else we can work with. We can work with photo filters. Like I said, I think there's a little bit too much greenish yellow still down here and these weird blues. So let's go to Image Adjustments, Photo Filters. These photo filters, we have various choices. So if your picture is very blue, you can work with a warming filter that neutralizes the color. If your picture is too yellow, you can use a cooling filter that adds a little bit more blue to it. If your picture is too green, you can use a magenta to reverse the greenness, to take the greenness out of there. And if it's too much magenta, too much purple, well then you just add a little bit of green on there. And again, you can justify how much of that filter you want to put on top of it. Preview it as well again. Okay. Let's see what else we've got. Hue and saturation, image adjustments, saturation, where is that saturation here? Saturation right here. So we can make pictures more vibrant in color or less vibrant. So that's basically looking at the colors in here. And for example, these blues, it will really crank up the blueness. So it really emphasizes or enhances the colors. Basically to the point where we're almost turning it to black and white or to vibrant colors. Right? I think that's actually getting a little bit closer to the actual scene of what it is that I wanted than when I initially shot. What else do we have? Images, adjustments, curves, a bit more complicated to work with. This is again as a histogram, and you can work with various things here, but this takes a lot more effort and time to kind of learn how to work with these things. You can try it, see if you can find something that maybe helps bring out something in your photo. But I think a lot of the other tools that you have available to you to work with will probably be much easier than working with curves. Okay. Let me just show you one more thing. Let me go back again to the editing part when it comes to making a crop in your photo. So this one, as you can see, was initially shot as a vertical. But let's say for my photos story or for my layout, I'd actually like a horizontal version of this. So we can go back to the crop tool. All right, we'll just leave it as crop tool. We'll leave it as original ratio. And I can now, of course, crop down, and that's still going to give me a vertical, or I can drag it down here. So you can see as I dragged it down here, it now switched it from a vertical to horizontal, right? Vertical to horizontal. So let me go to horizontal. Now I can maybe crop it as something like that. We'll leave the heads in, and we'll leave the shadows in. Hit the return key. So now we've changed it for more of a vertical picture into a horizontal picture. Again, that's the before, and that's the after. So we do have a few things that we can play around with here. Okay, let's look at this picture, which I have to show you another tool that we're going to use, and that is the clone tool. So it can happen from time to time that while you're taking photos, maybe you've got some small dust specks on your camera's lens, or there are small pieces of dust on the sensor. And that's what happened here. So the photo was taken, as you can see up here in the sky, we've got these out of focus dark spots, and that's from a little bit of dust that was probably on the lens. So we can try to take these away. But before I do that, let me do my first step, of course, that I would do. That should be one of my last things that I'm going to do, is to remove the dust spots. First of all, let me crop it the way I think I want it more. I want more of this guy's face out. I'm going to take a little bit of this sky out as well. So I'm going to make it more like this. I want to focus more on him here in the center. Have him right in the center, have his eyes right in that upper rule of thirds. Let me pull this down just a little bit so we're not moving. I want to keep his jacket in here. Okay, we've got the bottom of his jacket. We can maybe take a little bit out of here again. Okay, so that's my crop. Let me double click that. That's what I want to do. Let me just do some other adjustments. And let me change my levels. I can do an auto to see what happens. Nah, I don't like that. Let me make it a little bit more darker, because I really want to bring the emphasis on here. Let's see, that's the before, that's the after. Maybe a little bit more darker in here. Okay. Yeah, I kind of like that we really can focus on his face now and his eyes. All right. Hit OK. Let's say I'm happy with what I've done so far, but now I've still got these dust spots up here. So I'm going to turn to one more tool, which is this one right here, and that's the clone stamp tool. There's two choices. I'm going to use the top one. I'm not going to use the pattern. I'll use the top one. Now, the idea is to remove this dust spot. And I basically want to take a piece of this white sky and do like a copy and paste over top of that. To do that, I want my circle, which I've got right here, to be slightly larger than my dust spot, which is right here. And that's kind of what I've got right now, which is good. If I need to change my circle, which I'll show you in a moment for this one, because that's a considerably larger dust spot, but it's okay for this one right here. So here's the trick. I need to copy a piece of this sky right here and put it on top of there. To copy this piece of the sky, I hold the Option button on my keyboard, and you can see it changes my circle to looks like a target or a bullseye. That means I'm saying hold the Option key. I will now copy. Oops. Let's get back to my sides again. I'm now going to copy a piece of this guy right here and paste it on top of there. So Option, click. I've now selected this guy from there. I'm going to go on top of my dust spot, make a few clicks, gone. This one, my circle is not big enough, so let me increase the size of my circle. I can increase the size right here, make it a little bit larger. That looks good enough. Now I'm going to hit my Option key, click, right? So there we are, a few more clicks, and I've removed those dust spots. And that's pretty much acceptable to do. There's no other reason for us to add or subtract any more from this picture. That's not our job as journalists, not to add anything or subtract anything. You know, I could do more things if, let's say, I don't like the way those buildings look in the background. I could click Option and I could remove these buildings, but we're not going to do that. That's not what we're supposed to be doing as journalists, all right? So we need to leave those things alone. I'm just going back in history to bring my building back. Okay, so we've gotten rid of the dust spots. We've cropped it. I've toned it the way I want to tone it. Maybe I want to just sharpen his eyes a little bit more. So often what happens is when we take photos, the camera will slightly do a slight defocus or slight blur in the pictures, or maybe there was a little bit of movement or we didn't focus sharply enough. So we want to really improve his eyes. So let me just zoom in to his eyes here. I'm going to do as you can see, it's a little bit soft. It's a little bit out of focus. So I'm going to do a little bit of a sharpening here. So to do some sharpening, let's go to Filter, Sharpen, and Sharp Mask. All right, we got another pop-up menu. And by dragging these various sliders, you can see we're going to be doing something that's going to be affecting this photo. Please make sure you don't over-sharpen. And what I mean by over-sharpen is that means do it so that it doesn't look natural anymore. Okay, so here we've got this person's eyes. We can look at a preview. Let's sharpen just a little bit more, perhaps. Turn the threshold down a little bit. Yeah, so now you can slightly see the difference. His eyes look just a little bit more in focus than they were before, without altering too much the rest of the scene. All right, his hair is a little bit more sharper as well. We hit OK. Let's look back at it more. So now we can see that his eyes are a bit sharper, and that's exactly the focal point I want of this photo, is this guy's face right here. Okay, one more thing that you may want to do before you save the photo. If you have metadata to add, that means hidden information or hidden data that is attached with that photo, you can do that as well. Go to File, File Info, and metadata, as I'll show you here real quick, that has information that's already added or is already attached to that photo. For example, if here camera data, it shows you that this was shot with a Nikon D7000 camera with a certain kind of lens. That's the image size. It can also maybe tell you the ISO and the shutter speed, if I used a flash or not. As you can see here, it says flash did not fire. If your camera is GPS enabled, it'll add GPS data. So there's some things that are already automatically attached to that picture. Okay? Even the date that it was shot and the date that it was edited. So those types of things. Now, there's a few other things that we can add to this picture as well. And that is IPTC data. And that's, for example, your information. If you want to say to make sure that nobody can steal this photo from yours, or if they do try to steal it, you can always show them that, well, actually, this is my photo because this information will be attached to it. So you can put your address and stuff in here. You can go to the IPTC extension. You can add more information is here. You can add a credit line. For example, you can add your name, that, you know, I was the person who shot this photo. I can say that it was shot in Hong Kong. I can add a headline. I can add, you know, some other things. I can even add some captioning information if I want to write some captions as to this, what happened with this photo here, a description. Right? There's all kinds of stuff you can add. And as soon as you hit OK, it basically already attaches all of that data, metadata that you've changed. It attaches it to that photo. Last thing to do, File. We're going to save the photo now. File, Save As. I'm going to find the location. I'm going to put it to my desktop. Let's give it a name. Happy Valley Better. I'll leave it as a JPEG, of course. We're not going to save it as anything else. So our format is going to be JPEG. Save. One last thing to do. We don't need a full quality of 12. We can compress this image down a little bit because you can see if we save it at 12, it'll be 6.6 megabytes in size. Let's change it to 8. It's going to go down. I mean, that's 1/4 the size now, which is great. We'll leave it as baseline standard. Nothing else that we need to do. Hit OK. Done. It's saved. Let's have a quick look at this. Let's hide Photoshop. Here's the picture. Double click. That's what it looks like as a preview. All right, so again, if you want to save the photo, File, Save As, find a location. I'm going to put it back on my desktop. Let's call this black and white ship. Leave it as a JPEG. Save it. Change my quality to 8, baseline standard. OK. Again, we can hide Photoshop just to have a look at it. It's right here. And that's a preview of our picture. Okay, that's pretty much all there is to Photoshop. Nothing else to learn. So I hope you enjoy the editing, and good luck.